In 1995, John Suk founded Deep Elm Records. Today, 20 years later, Deep Elm Records boasts over 220 releases. We celebrate the pioneering spirit and the awesome artists that make up Deep Elm Records each week here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. The unofficial Deep Elm Podcast begins now. Welcome to the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, episode 22. My name is Alan Wayne. Welcome, and I'm glad you're listening, either on Spreaker Live or on iTunes or wherever you may be listening. Thank you. Tonight's episode is called 500 Miles to Cari Clara. Now, what the hell does that mean? Let me tell you what it means. Eric Deidrichs, who is the brainchild of Cari Clara, and Ryan Mallott of 500 Miles to Memphis were schoolyard friends when they signed up to play a talent show together as teenagers. Instead of their original idea of lip-syncing to a Ramones song, they decided to learn instruments and actually play it. This one decision was the catalyst for both to pursue a passion for music, albeit in much different styles. Yet they still both landed on the illustrious Deep Elm Roster, and their music can still be enjoyed today. Both men have remained friends to this day, Eric being the best man at Ryan's wedding, for example, and both still create music, with 500 Miles to Memphis playing gigs throughout the Cincinnati area, and Eric Deidrichs in the studio crafting some new magic. It's a story of friendship, pursuing your dreams, and the record label that helped make it happen, Deep Elm Records. And I just want to say thank you to Deep Elm Records for the permission to play this great music and to tell the stories. Now, Eric was first to sign with Deep Elm Records with his album Miniature American Model Society on August 13th, 2004. Cari Clara is generally a one-man deal, but does have a touring band. So, but all the creative juice that comes out of his music it's all Eric Deidrichs. Now, the review that I chose to pick for this podcast was from a publication called Splendid, and it goes, the album's real prize is closer Hunt for the Kill. A heavily distorted crunch drives the song at its chorus and is replaced during the song's final movement by full keys and lyrics that call out for change and redemption. It's the same type of ending that can elevate everything that preceded it. A record so heavily laden with synthetic reverberations, grinding pulses, and heavily filtered lead vocals can't easily be dismissed as raw, but the album's desire for genuine emotion and experience is so clear and unashamed that it's difficult to come up with a better description for its searching intensity. That was from Splendid, and right now we're going to hear a couple from that album, Miniature American Model Society. We will hear the aforementioned Hunt for a Kill, but also we're going to hear the opener for the album, which is called Deliver Instant. So how about we just start with the opener? We'll start with Deliver Instant, and then we will go to Hunt for the Kill. This is Alan Wayne here, episode 22 of the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, entitled 500 Miles to Cari Clara. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
Save it all, but what for? Fire like a flare till I don't wanna try anymore. And you are the hunt for the kill. You are a beautiful thrill. Self-mutilation, begging to stop a dam to an ocean, caught in a web, a generation destined to sell the soul of the nation, warped to an angle, stuffed in a coffin, cut from the forest, choking and coughing, left as a carbon, a latent image, the ring of smoke adrift as a signal. A laceration from penetration, a warning sign to change our position. It's nothing changing, you must be joking. A far cry from what we were hoping. It won't stop from this path. The crime seems a bloodbath. And take word from our mouth, take the heart. Cut it out, 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 cut it out. The hunt for the cure.
That was two from Cari Clara off of the album Miniature American Model Society that was released in 2004. And that was the first album that was released by either Eric Deidrichs or Ryan Mallott. Well, 3 years later, and I don't know if it was through the prodding of Eric Deidrichs, it just seems a little funny that they both got on the Deep Elm label, but 3 years later, Ryan Mallott and his band 500 Miles to Memphis debuted on the Deep Elm label to much critical acclaim with their debut album, Sunshine in a Shot Glass. Now, the review I'm going to read is from Spill Magazine. Quote, Sunshine in a Shot Glass opens with the squealing jig of a fiddle over the swelling bass drum thud of a punk anthem. Welcome to country punk. a mixture of two genres that is less fusion than simple collision, and seems almost paradoxical in its intent, but nonetheless works surprisingly well for Cincinnati, Ohio-based quartet 500 Miles to Memphis. It's appealing in a novel sort of way. The album has similarities to bands like the Mahones or Rum Runner, except instead of incorporating the working-class folk influences of old guard England, 500 Miles to Memphis have decided instead upon the American Midwest for their source of ethno-inspiration. That review was from Spill magazine. So, yeah, when 500 Miles to Memphis came on the scene, a lot of the Deep Elm crowd was like, what the is this? What is this what is this really? And it was country punk, and it kind of goes with the Deep Elm type of theory that anything that they like, they will sign. Anybody they like, they will sign. It doesn't matter the genre, it doesn't matter the timing, it doesn't matter, I mean, if it's good, it's good. You know, and that's kind of why I like Deep Elm Records so much. If I didn't like Deep Elm, would I be doing a weekly podcast to them and kind of a tribute? They are an awesome record label with awesome acts, and I'm going to prove that right now here with two tracks from 500 Miles to Memphis debut album Sunshine in a Shot Glass. This is All My Friends Are Crazy, followed by The Regret, here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast.
Better than this, yeah.
You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. Welcome back to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. I'm your host, Alan Wayne. Tonight we are showcasing two bands, doing kind of a split like Deep Elm used to do with bands on their 45s. We're doing 500 miles to Cari Clara, which is 500 miles to Memphis, and Cari Clara. The two heads of the bands, Ryan Mallott and Eric Deidrichs, were actually friends, good friends, who both ended up on the Deep Elm label. Very interesting story there. Well, Cari Clara put out the next album between these two, and actually he put out two albums in succession. He put out It's Our Hearts Thereafter, which was a full length, in December 16th of 2009, and put out You Better Run January 5th, 2010, which was a 5-track album. And what they said about It's Our Hearts Thereafter was, and the other album, You Better Run as well, this is from Power Pop. Quote, I was somewhat intrigued by the band's list of influences. Radiohead, Muse, Pink Floyd, Elliott Smith, Big Star, Grant Lee Phillips, Beta Band. Cool, huh? And so here I am pretty much astounded by It's Our Hearts Thereafter and the follow-up EP You Better Run by Cari Clara. Why so? Not only do these cited inspirations make sense in the context of their music, they write amazing songs as well. Well, we're going to hear one of those amazing songs from Cari Clara. It is called Wide Awake, and this is off of the album It's Our Hearts Thereafter, here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. Not to be outdone by his childhood friend, Ryan Mallott and his band 500 Miles to Memphis released We've Built Up to Nothing on February 15th, 2010. The review for this album, the featured review for this podcast, comes from City Beat. Quote, "We've Built Up to Nothing is nothing short of amazing. 500 Miles to Memphis has blended evolution and revolution, creating a combustible sonic mixture that explodes with a blistering twang and punk energy. After the disc's poppily orchestral introduction, It's Alright screams off the line like Wilco if Jeff Tweedy was using a cattle prod for a slide. Continuing with Let It Go, which imagines Ben Folds fronting Rank and File and 6 Foot Hole with its melodic social distortion vibe. With Nothing's wild variety, Beatlesque touches, and vibrant maturity, it seems logical to ask, is this 500 Miles to Memphis Sgt. Pepper? Well, it's pretty close. Unfortunately, it was the last album that was recorded by 500 Miles to Memphis on the Deep Elm label, but we still have the music. So here is the aforementioned 6 Foot Hole, followed by Let It Go, here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast.
Scars and calluses to prove it. I'm not sure when, but them dudes will get paid. Traveling the land in a 5-piece band, burning tread and trannies on the way. Tomorrow ain't so far away. This road we're on, I'm gonna stay and tell ya you don't hear a sound. Take a 6-foot hole, put me in the ground. Well, I've got me a tip jar and this old beat up guitar. If I play on another deaf ear, I might go insane. Well, there's a pair of blue eyes in the back by the pool table, all dressed in black, and making her way up front, boys, give 'em hell. Tomorrow ain't so far away. This road we're on, I'm gonna stay and tell ya you don't hear a sound. Take a 6-foot hole, put me in the ground. You won't hear me knocking on them pearly gates. I'd rather spend my time in a more fun place. Shot of bourbon whiskey, hell make it 2. Need to hold him round for my crew. We're coming down. Tomorrow ain't so far away. This road we're on, I'm gonna stay and tell ya you don't hear a sound. Take a 6-foot hole, put me in the ground.
You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
I've been hanging in there lately, been hanging on by the thread of the news. So why don't you cut me loose? What's going on? I'm hoping you'll forgive me. I'm hoping you will
last album from these two childhood friends, both in separate bands, by the way, to appear on the Deep Elm label, at least time-wise, was Cari Clara's Midnight March, July 11th, 2012. The following review. Quote, Midnight March is like that lost gem humming on the AM radio. Songs like Safe and Battle Hymn borderline the mystery that lies ahead. Fueled with an arsenal of layering and hooks, these songs capture the survivalist spirit of the night. We've all had those moments where we ask ourselves, can I make it through the night? Cari Clara runs through the emotions from defiance to despair, but all leading to a sense of positivism, and for the listener, it's a powerful feeling. And all of this pays off through them being genuine. Be it the proper rock anthem of greater history, or the acoustic turned symphonic bliss on homage to excess. Diedrichs' voice transcends through the words, making what he sings poignant and electrifying. Some great reviews for a couple of great artists. As I said before, the two heads of each band, Cari Clara as well as 500 Miles to Memphis, they're still doing their thing. Cari Clara has recently teased, Eric Deidrichs rather, the brainchild of Cari Clara, has teased that he is back in the studio working on some material. And 500 Miles to Memphis right now is gigging, but Ryan Mallott, from what I understand, is on his second baby with his wife. So, that could be really, really tough to gig through. Believe me, I know. Being a musician, I remember I had to gig 3 nights one time in Los Angeles in a row and go to my day job and stay up with the kids and everything, and man, it was brutal. So I can't fault Ryan for taking some time off. So we're going to end this podcast with a track from Midnight March. This is called Safe, and it's personally one of my favorites. So thank you for tuning in to the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, episode 22. This is 500 Miles to Cari Clara. Be sure to check us out on iTunes. Just type in the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. I know it's a little finger work, but you'll be okay. And also on SoundCloud. Now, SoundCloud, the URL is a little different. It's www.soundcloud.com/indie, INDIE, indie till death. So, without further ado, here is Cari Clara with Safe, and I bid you a good and safe afternoon, evening, whenever it is you'll be listening to the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast.
I remember when I could look away. For a moment we were young, where shadows still remain. Now it's so hard to breathe, tracing faint memories. Do you ever wish you could start again?
You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.